It's Wednesday, December 5th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we get a math lesson from the finance director, learn more about Chapter H designation, and find new catch basin construction at Cordwood Landing. First, let's start with some news you can use. There are some new smoking regulations that were unanimously adopted at the Board of Health meeting on November 27th. The definition of tobacco products is expanded to include any products derived from tobacco or nicotine, including e-cigarettes and vaping devices. Regulations also increase the minimum legal sales age for tobacco products to 21 and bans tobacco product sales in educational institutions. A tobacco sales permit will not be issued to any new applicant for a retail location within 500 feet of a public or private elementary or secondary school. This regulation also bans smoking within 10 feet of any municipal building entranceway accessible to the public, bans smoking at municipal-owned parks, playgrounds, beaches, and athletic fields, and bans smoking at public transportation waiting areas. The use of e-cigarettes is prohibited wherever smoking is prohibited. This regulation goes into effect on December 30th. Copies of the regulation are available at the Public Health Division office at 200 Main Street in Hyannis or online at www.townofbarnstable.us. One of the tools the town uses in its budget process is the 5-year financial forecast. The document is not a spending plan, but helps in identifying trends. How does a town know how much money they need to run? With me today, Director of Finance, Mark Milne, and we're going to talk about the 5-year forecast for finances. Talking just before our interview, there's some fascinating details here. Stay with me, folks, really. Math is fun. Right?
Yes.
So first off, what is this document? It's on the website. It's called the 5-year forecast for finance. What is this document?
Yeah, it's the documents to be used to help us understand revenue and expenditure trends over the past 10 years and how they might project out over the next 5-year period. It's not meant to be interpreted as a spending plan for the next 5 years. This is where we're going to spend our resources. It's more of just helping, of a tool to help us identify where we may have some structural imbalances going forward, based on the level of services that we have, that we provide today, and what the cost of those services are projected to be over the next 5-year period. We don't make any assumptions to the changes in service levels. That can change from year to year.
Right. So let's back up a little bit and talk about the previous 5 years. So you're now on the next 5-year cycle. What did you see trend-wise that came through on your 5-year forecast 5 years ago?
Sure. We saw that new property taxes from new property growth was greater than what we anticipated under the last forecast. The economy has recovered from the Great Recession, of course, and we're 10 years out from that recession, and so things have been improving. So we've seen improving revenue sources across the board. New growth, new property tax growth, state aid has grown as the state's fiscal condition has improved. We've seen some considerable increases in state aid. We've also seen significant increases in our motor vehicle excise tax revenue as the auto industry has enjoyed some of their greatest growth in decades under the last 5 years. And our permitting revenue from building permits, gas permits, and so forth, we've seen record growth in that area as well.
So this forecasting and these trends, as you look back and then forward, some of these things were directly related to the Great Recession, and now with all of these industries rebounding, the revenues are increasing. What do you see as you move forward into the 5 years now that it seems things are kind of stable? Yes,
I don't anticipate that we'll be able to see, be able to replicate what's happened over the past 5 years, because I think we're at a point now where I think we can maintain what we've seen as far as growth, but to duplicate that growth over the next 5 years period would be a very significant challenge, I think. Right. However, we are more optimistic going forward than we were the last 5-year forecast. because we have seen some strength in the economy, and that's affected all those revenue categories that I mentioned before, as well as our revenue generated from beaches as well. We're seeing a lot of visitors come to the town and enjoying those natural resources that we have. And so we're a little bit conservative in our projections going forward, but we need to be, because we have to be in a position to plan for the next recession if and when it does occur.
Right. And you talk about forecasts. What are some of the categories in this forecast?
Well, on the expenditure side, the largest one by far is employee costs. Between salaries and employee benefits, it's approximately 80% of the overall operating expenditures for the town. And that's not unusual for a municipality, because we're in a service providing field. And so, we try to project out what the salaries and then benefits are going to be. And we know employee benefits typically increase at a higher percentage rate than inflation in other areas of the operating budget, and so that's just a given. That's where we are, and that's not unique to Barnstable. That's everywhere. Healthcare costs are significant, and there's limited steps that we can take at a local level to control those healthcare cost increases. It'll take steps at the federal and state level to really rein in the cost of healthcare services.
Right. And when we look at the trends and forecasts, and then you start to do budgets, so, it takes a lot of work to do a document like this, I would imagine, right? Lots of different formulas and things like that. So once this is complete, how is it used?
Well, we use it as a guide a couple of different ways. First, to develop our budget for the subsequent fiscal year. So we're looking at fiscal year 20 right now, and we're using this document as a guide to help us prepare our revenue estimates for fiscal year 20, as well as our expenditure estimates. We're busy costing out the true cost of those expenditures now as more data is coming available to us. But we also use it, we try to use it as a tool for priority setting and strategic planning. We provide a document to the council as well, and to the administration, so that they can get a sense as to where's the town's financial condition heading towards over the next 5 years, and how should we take that information and use it for our strategic planning purposes. So it's really a tool that helps assist us in those areas.
Right, and strategic planning is really critical to municipalities, because there's so many variables out there that can change, that as you do these plans, there's contingency plans as well.
Right. Yes. Yeah. You have to be resilient. You need to be. You have to be in a position to be able to react in the event if something unplanned were to happen. So we've. As indicated in that document, we do have a number of reserves available for us at our disposal to help mitigate any potential unanticipated events that may occur, hopefully creating a more soft landing, so to speak. If something negative were to happen, we wouldn't have to immediately make a significant reduction to the operating budget someplace. We can do it over a period of time, creating a softer landing if we were in a position where we had to make reductions as a result of another recession.
Right. And who is it just you that works on this, or is there a team, and where does that data aggregate?
Yeah, a lot of the data is collected by a financial budget analyst, Nathan Empey. He does a significant amount of work on this project with direction from me, but he does most of the number crunching, the spreadsheet development, and all of that. And so yeah, he plays a significant role in this, and we couldn't do it without Nathan's efforts. He does a fantastic job for us.
Yeah, and all that data source, that's from different departments that are mostly collections, I would imagine, right? Through your beach permits and recreation and those kinds of things. So they have to take all of the things that have come in through the past 5 years or so to say, hey, what does this look like now?
Yeah, we fortunately we have a financial management system that that tracks all of this data over a 10-year period, so we can go back into that system and draw a lot of information out of there. And so, that's what Nathan does. He takes a lot of the information out of our financial systems for the past 10 years and uses that to project over the next 5 years. So the history of the data that is needed is available in a lot of in different formats in different areas, but most of it is right in our Munis financial system that Nathan he gets it from that, mostly there.
There must be some pretty cool pivot tables in there.
Oh yeah, pivot tables. Yeah. Yes, Nathan is a very strong Microsoft Excel user, and he has all those tricks of the trade that he uses to analyze that that information. So
that's amazing. As a data junkie myself, I can't imagine having that much data at your fingertips and then having to put it into a document that the town council can read, and that residents, if they choose to, can read this document to really understand how the town plans for the future.
Yeah. You don't want to see the stuff behind the scenes. That's where it gets real confusing. But it does help us. We do take a look at it, and we try to create some what we refer to as sensitivity analysis, so that if this were to happen, what would be the impact on fund balance, let's say, over here. And so Nathan has a lot of spreadsheets set up so that we can analyze situations like that.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. See, I told you folks, math is fun, right? Anything else you want to add to let residents know?
This is a fluid document. We update it every single year. And so, next year there'll be another 5-year forecast. It used to be 10 years, but the longer you go out, the less accurate the numbers get. And so the council actually this is a charter requirement that this document be produced every year. So the council made a change to the charter last year that reduced it from 10-year to 5-year, just because the accuracy of the numbers tend to go away as the longer you go out. And we live in such a dynamic environment these days that you have to be ready to act and react and anticipate things. So we felt that going to a 5-year forecast would be just better for everyone.
Right. Required reading, folks. It's on the website, townofbarnstable.us. You can download it and take a look at it. And thanks so much for your work on it.
You're welcome.
How does the town build revenue for important capital project funding and other initiatives? Economic development plays a starring role, and Chapter H designation from the Cape Cod Commission could help. What does it take in the town of Barnstable to do large-scale economic development? With me today, Elizabeth Jenkins, master of all trades, hats of many wears. You really, literally are everywhere in economic development here in the town of Barnstable. First I've ever heard of Chapter H.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about that today, so residents and business owners and perhaps folks that are considering Barnstable for projects know what Chapter H is and how it may affect them if they want to start a large-scale business here in the town of Barnstable. Chapter H, what is it?
Yeah, so one of the key missions of the Planning and Development Department here in Barnstable is to encourage new development appropriately located that will bring new year-round living wage jobs to Barnstable and increase our economic tax base. So we're always looking for opportunities to provide regulatory incentives for those things to happen. So Chapter H is one of the tools that actually the Cape Cod Commission, our regional planning agency, has in their toolbox to work to give municipalities flexibility in terms of how development within the town interacts with those regional regulations. So we're all familiar with the growth incentive zone. We went through that process earlier this year where we established an area in our downtown core, downtown Hyannis, where we actually were able to lift all of the kind of regulatory authority that the Cape Cod Commission had there. With the idea that we have kind of a long-term strategic and capital plan in place to provide infrastructure there. So Chapter H is kind of a parallel to the growth incentive zone applications, which are found under Chapter G, which allow us to look at the large-scale development in this case in Barnstable along the Route 132 corridor and the industrial park around Independence Drive, kind of that area north of the airport. So what Chapter H does is it allows for those development of regional impact thresholds. So the point where a project meets a certain scale and size that it triggers that Cape Cod Commission review, it allows us to raise those thresholds, kind of in consideration of the fact that the Route 132 corridor does have infrastructure in place to accommodate a larger scale of development than, say, a small village center would. Right. So it's recognizing, again, that infrastructure is in place there to serve a larger scale of development and changes the way that the Cape Cod Commission interacts with the town in a regulatory way. So at this point, again, if you're familiar at all with Cape Cod Commission regulations, the kind of baseline for when a project triggers Cape Cod Commission review is 10,000 square feet. So that's the baseline that they use. Any big project that that creates a building that's over 10,000 square feet in area is found to have a likelihood that it might have a regional infrastructure impact and then gets Cape Cod Commission review. So in this case, in what we call our economic center, which is kind of that Route 132 commercial corridor, which is really, it acts as Cape Cod's downtown. It's where we find kind of all of our larger scale retail. The stores there are a lot bigger. The scale of development there is a lot bigger. So what we're going to ask is to raise those development of regional impact thresholds from the minimum of 10 up to 20,000 square feet. So 100% increase over what we have. Again, still pretty modest in nature considering some of the scale of the development there, but nonetheless accommodating more growth. And then in our industrial park, what they called an industrial service and trade area under the current regional planning framework, we're going to make a request to the Commission to increase that baseline threshold from 10,000 square feet to 40,000 square feet, with the caveat that what we're really looking to encourage in that industrial park area are businesses that are going to bring year-round living wage jobs to Barnstable. And again, with the further understanding that there is some land use conflict there between potential industrial development and our public drinking water supply wells. A lot of that area is mapped as protected area from drinking water supply. So what we're really trying to encourage there are clean industries. So research and development type of businesses that don't involve large quantities of hazardous materials. Again, making it easier, giving an incentive for these types of businesses to locate here in Barnstable.
All right. So let's just back up just a little bit, is that we're not doing this to put in another mall. Yeah. Right? So I just want to make that clear, is that that's not really the purpose of these types of regulatory moves on the town. It's to widen the playing field of what can go in those particular areas. And with the blue economy, having those hurdles already kind of, gone, it's easier for some of those blue economy businesses to actually come in.
Exactly. So I think objectives here are really threefold and reflecting exactly that we have to be a little bit more creative about regulatory development and incentives here in Barnstable. So I think what we're doing is we're looking to make it easier for businesses that are already there and established to do modest expansions. If you're a big business that already has a Cape Cod Commission decision, or if you're a business that predated the Commission but is looking to expand, and maybe that expansion itself, it's not creating something new, but it's helping that business expand and stay here in Barnstable. This will allow them to do that through these modest changes. Second of all, I think it's really making sure that we're taking advantage of all of the tools that the Cape Cod Commission is giving us. They make this available to towns, and we feel like we meet the baseline qualifications for participating. So, we're looking again, and this is the third reason why I think this is an advantage. We're looking to really show our business community that we're taking full advantage of opportunities to provide them incentives and show that Barnstable's open for business.
So what's this process? You know, when you say Cape Cod Commission, everybody kind of like takes a step back going, oh my gosh, this is, you know, lots of hearings and public types of things happening. So what does this process involve?
Yeah. So at least locally, we do have to put together an application, just like any private sector applicant would as well. So we have to put together an application to the Cape Cod Commission, again, showing that we have a planning framework in place here in Barnstable that protects our natural resource areas and directs new growth and investment into already established centers. Okay. So again, I think that is our framework, you know, our comprehensive planning framework here in Barnstable. So our application demonstrates that we have, again, the kind of the appropriate zoning in place here in town to implement that growth management strategy and encourage and direct new growth and investment here, and that while doing responsible capital planning as well, that we understand that if we are going to accommodate new growth on the Route 132 corridor, that's going to take incremental investment in our infrastructure, be it our transportation infrastructure, our water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, and that we're planning in that. So there's a whole capital strategy that really reflects our capital improvements program that's outlined in there as well. So we put this application together. There will be a public hearing at a joint planning board town council meeting. That public hearing is going to be advertised for November 15th, and the application is available on the Planning and Development Department website if the public's interested in reviewing it.
So this is actually very exciting for the town of Barnstable. Again, we already have some of that infrastructure in place. So this application goes in, we've got some public hearings, and then what happens if we do get that Chapter H designation?
So should the Planning Board and Town Council look favorably on that, it authorizes the town manager to support that application to the Cape Cod Commission. It does have to be reviewed and approved by the commission itself. Okay. Should that all go through and we're positive about it and become enacted, then I think, you know, our reaction will be two things. First of all is, you know, integrated into our kind of marketing and messaging out to new businesses, again, that, you know, we're really working for you, the town's really working for you in terms of whether you're an existing business or a new business, to make that process for Barnstable to become easier. And then secondly, when we do get applications in, being able to work with new businesses and the commission, again, to make that regulatory process for anybody who comes through and exceeds those thresholds a little bit easier.
Truly a director of planning and development. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Paula. It's been a pleasure.
A shared passion for cleaner water inspires a partnership with the Association to Preserve Cape Cod in a non-traditional approach for stormwater drains and catch basins.
So right here at Cordwood Landing, we're doing a stormwater treatment retrofit. So in front of us, we can see an existing stormwater treatment system that's capturing runoff from the roadway. And we're also going to be installing a new one towards the end of the landing to capture kind of the overflow that this doesn't get and everything from the parking area. And right now they're just getting started with construction. So down the way they're setting up kind of the silt socks for erosion control around the edge. One of the biggest problems you can get in terms of maintenance with stormwater systems is you get too much organic material, sand washing into them. That clogs up the system, because really these are all about capturing the rainwater and the pollutants and removing them through the soil and root layer. So you need the water to be able to soak in. So if you get sand and leaf material in there, they're not going to function anymore. They're going to get clogged up. So that's the first important step to getting things ready for construction. The large stormwater treatment system near the road is capturing a lot of the runoff right from Old Post Road, but some of that continues down the landing, and this whole parking area, which is all soil and sediment, the rest of that continues downstream and into the bays untreated. So, I mean, that can be anything from, again, the nitrogen, bacteria, other pollutants off of cars. So right in front of us, this is going to be the location of the new stormwater treatment system, which is going to capture the majority of the rest of that runoff. So kind of the area surrounded by, at least here, the pink, where there used to be a parking spot, that's essentially where the new system is going to be. And then again, around it, we've cleared all of the invasives, so that'll get cleared and planted out with native plants as well. And it improves the view now that we don't have kind of this growth of brush. I mean, one of the things we want to do is not just improve water quality, but see how this landing is being used and improve it for the public. So kind of from where we're standing down to the water, to stabilize it, to improve that access for boats and vehicles. We're going to have these porous paver materials. Again, it allows the rainwater to soak in, but it reduces the erosion that we're going to get, and any of the bacteria that would cling to that sediment that would get washed in is no longer going to get washed into the water. It's engineering with nature in mind is really what it is. Like, you're using what plants can naturally do, what the soil naturally does, and you're engineering with nature. So it's not completely natural, but you're using the natural functioning, those chemical processes to help treat what we've kind of, where we've caused problems.
Here's a look at the community calendar. Looks like the weather will cooperate for tonight's Barnstable Village Stroll, starting at 6 p.m. It's a perfect time to enjoy festivities with family and friends all along Main Street in Barnstable Village. Visit Santa, sample food from area businesses and organizations, the infamous Firehouse chili, chowder, cider, cookies, popcorn, and hot dogs. There is caroling, kids crafts, and face painting and more. Check out www.barnstablevillage.org for more information. Comments, suggestions, accolades? Connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. Email us or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works. For you, I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.